pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening and Happy New Year to everyone. On this evening's agenda, we'll be covering, we have the New Ipswich Library trustees for their warrant article, along with Souhegan Valley Ambulance Services, continuation of town office budgets, government building budgets, and I think there's a couple others that we need to address yet. So, any opening comments, updates? Nope.
I received just Sean Talbot is finishing up his third year as the New Ipswich delegate to SVAS,
Okay.
and was asking. He said he would like to stay on if we would like to reappoint him. So that is something we need to take care of.
Do we know when that expires? Is it
It's-
first of the year?
Yes.
Okay.
Is there any reason not to appoint him?
I don't believe so. He did it. He was a very good delegate for us and a good intermediary through the whole MOU process. And he's keeps himself informed on what's going on. So
Reappoint him.
I would like to reappoint him. So.
Is there a motion?
Motion to reappoint Sean Talbot as New Ipswich delegate to the Souhegan Valley Ambulance
For a period of 3
for
years.
a period of 3 years.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Is his name UN or WN? Do you know?
I believe it's. What's that knowledge? No. Because I know I misspelled it once. SHAWA. Even.
While we're waiting, I didn't bring in that folder with the revisions that Tim had made to his budget. Do you have copies of those?
I did not, but I can go grab. Let's see, I scanned and sent that to you, so I have that electronically. Would you like me to print out several copies?
I think the FAC should have copies also.
Okay.
Yeah.
Before they come in. Good. So, this is what they're requesting for a warrant article.
Yeah,
Okay.
I saw that.
This is the information they gave us last year. That is what they were. So, but you could keep going down. That's our total revenue,
Yeah.
okay? That was our total expenses.
So there's
So they were making
15 grand.
in profit.
Where's that profit going?
Back into them.
To the trust fund?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So I think that suggests that they don't need all that money.
Which is what we suggested last year, and it was brought down, so. So I just wanted, because you didn't have access to that information, I figured I'd share it
No,
before.
appreciate it. Do you know what museum passes they are offering to what museums?
I think any of the state museums, I think they get discounted passes and such through the
okay.
library.
It's good to know. I'm a museum junkie.
Costs $22,000 to paint a library. That seems high.
You gonna do it for 21?
Sure.
Yeah, but he wasn't just a painter, he was an artist.
Yeah. So that's a 31-page document, so it's gonna take a while.
Okay.
So we can start with the original.
The issue with the paint was the exterior of the building had lead paint, so they had to pay for remediation. And that's why it's taken so long, because no one wanted to
Take it on.
take it on.
I don't think they have it remediated. I think you just need to be a licensed. You need to have a,
Yeah, it's a special license to do
Yeah,
it, and
yeah.
I know there is something with the cleanup. It has to be
you do,
handled.
you have to capture it on
Yeah.
plastic, but
Yeah.
just.
Yeah, it can't just go in the bushes and.
Yeah.
Don't need
We all came out all right.
Aren't we didn't chew on windowsills
Yeah.
back in the day?
I mean, you know, every crib we were in was covered in that stuff. We all chewed on it.
Police budget revised.
I don't know, that explains a great deal.
It probably does.
Nice and fresh.
Did you receive any, everybody coming tonight? Or
So
anybody
they're
say
here,
they're
the
not?
library folks are here.
Thinking of the FAC members.
FAC,
I heard from Jack, he's out sick.
okay.
I
Okay.
didn't hear from Jeff, and Nicole's falling off the face of the earth.
Good evening. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good? You all set to,
I guess so.
do your thing?
Have you gotten copies of the warrant articles?
We did.
Do you have any questions for us to start?
Questions?
Again, just asking, so, because we had no backup other than this piece of paper, I'm going back to the information we received last year as backup. So, last year on the backup, total income for the library was expected to be around $57,124. Expenditures for the library were going to be around $42,100, which means there was an income in that year, or an unexpended.
Is this for 18, 19?
It would have been the information I received for the 19 budget, because we didn't receive any income or any backup for the 2020 budget.
I don't know where a $50,000 number would have come from.
I have it right here. It's the information.
Can I look at it just so I can see? I wasn't able to make it to the meeting last year. Because the income total I see for last year is 41.
Going
Will
off
those be
the-
figures for 18, because we were in 19?
Oh. Michelle, this is the, which I think is 2017 though.
Oh, yeah.
That's,
Okay. So I'm still what I'm
And that has the, income from our dividends?
yeah, the $20,000 must be what we pull from the trust.
Mhm.
When we,
Well, it's money that's there as operating income for the library. So what I'm saying is that if you have total revenue for the library of 57,000 and total expenditures of the library of 42,000, that meant in that year you had a surplus of $15,000, which is why we had an issue last year in increasing the budget. So we kind of broke even and went with the middle number.
So since then, we've spent $22,000 painting the outside, and we just got done with a $10,000 septic project. So since those numbers that you saw, we've spent $32,000 in one budget.
and that's not money we're asking the town for.
Right.
We pull that
yeah.
from the trust.
Mm-hmm.
So we are spending that money on things to maintain the building.
You know, typically in the past, I don't have my history book with me, but you give us a breakdown of what you have just for our information to know, this is what you've got out there in the fund, this is what you're gonna be spending from. Did you, or are you able to generate that?
Not right now.
I don't-
Okay. We have to pull some information from Ronald. We'll get some from them and we can
Okay,
email it if that's easier.
sure.
Yeah, the other thing I'd like to bring to your attention anyway, is we talked to the Stearns Burden Committee,
Yep.
if you will, and they indicated they are desperately looking for places to put their money if you can provide an educational background to it. So, if you only had 2 programs this year with them, you might want to look at increasing the number of programs.
We've been asking for money from them and getting denied because they don't like our programs. Or we can't get enough people. Which, I mean, hosting programs is hard because you never know what you're gonna get. It's hard to spend $400 on a program and have advertisements out there on Facebook and in the paper and have trustees and family members show up. So you never know what you're gonna get in terms of programming, so it's hard to spend a ton of money. But we do, at least quarterly, try to ask them to do one of our programs. Historically, they've always done our children's summer program, and was it last year they denied it? I don't remember what we had requested it for, do you?
Do you know why it's denied? Because as Selectman Hamlin says, we've met with them to discuss what the parameters are.
Mm.
The only thing they seem to have a concern, and we kind of agreed with them, was if we're bringing in someone to do a presentation that is there getting money elsewhere, trying to sell a product or whatever.
Okay.
And we said, okay, that we understand. But other than that, they were saying, there aren't many applications for.
Was it our insect program this past summer, or was it Odds Bodkin?
I think they didn't like a children's storytelling program, which was very appropriate, I thought, but not for their purchase.
Was the children's books being sold?
No, it was Odds Bod, if I remember correctly, it was Odds Bodkin, who is a famous singer.
I've heard him.
Yeah, it wasn't a great turnout, unfortunately, but.
And we just sent an application for an animal program during April vacation this year. And they did approve it, but they, kind of put a caveat with it saying that they might not be able to approve anything in the future unless we can guarantee there'll be about 50 people there at the program. And,
Can we never
How can you guarantee anything?
No,
Exactly.
Yeah.
so.
But they've never hosted a program themselves, so maybe they should
Well,
try
see,
that.
that's what they're saying, is that's not their purview. They're the
They're the funds.
Managers.
managers of the fund,
Right.
not to expend it on programs. So that's why I wish more groups in town, whether it's a library or historic, whatever, knew that could become aware that fund is there.
Well, we keep trying, but honestly, we are getting really discouraged. Typically, we get $300 from the children's fair every year, but we're only getting $200 this year because they have fewer funds because Stearns Burton didn't pay for their program for the summer. So, it's affecting other aspects. We keep trying, but it is frustrating to keep getting denied and not quite understand why.
So how many times has it been denied? Do you know?
I don't know.
Okay.
There's so many people involved with the different aspects that I don't remember. Nicole typically asks.
And it was also based on getting the application to them at the precise time that they needed it.
Well, I do know
It
that.
used to
They
be
did say
would
they,
come to us, and
yeah.
then once we started submitting the applications, they were coming in at all the wrong times and.
Well, they do have a notice on the application, they need to receive it.
And we've
Now we
done
have
that
Yeah,
Yes.
now.
okay, good, good.
Yeah, because we asked them to change the wording on that because there was two wordings. It was wanted it best case before the meeting, but at least this many time before your event. And I told them you can't have both because people are submitting it, and then you're saying that you can't meet. So
Okay.
we have asked them to make sure that they change it to, if it has to be before the meeting, then it has to be the quarterly meeting prior to your event happening, which means you may have to have it in quite a bit ahead of time because if they're only meeting quarterly. So,
We've been much more organized. We have new energy, new blood, so I think it'll be easier to work with that.
So you don't have this year's budget? Copy of this year's budget?
I have a copy, but it's not, so we hired Michelle Pelletier as our new director, and this does not reflect the salary change. So that's the only thing, because we haven't updated that yet.
But it is in the article.
Right. The difference is in there. I don't have very many copies, but this has some
We
of our
have the
basics.
technology to get additional copies.
Yeah, we do have additional copies here.
Okay.
Oh, you've done?
Don't have, all I have is the, really the cover
Yeah,
sheet,
you
not the
don't have the
detail.
budget.
Do you have one?
I don't. My, should have one.
I need
I don't have it with me.
These copies? One per? I could-
Yeah, they were for us to
They're
look at,
complete.
but
what do we need?
I'll look at it when you're.
I'll make
when
some.
you're doing it.
Increased, yes.
You mentioned that. That you were talking about.
You got that?
Can I ask a question, just out of curiosity? Under expenses, it says ebooks. Based on usage, and usage is down.
every time someone checks on an ebook through Overdrive, it costs the library money.
Really?
And then at the end of the year, we pay whatever our patrons have used.
So why don't you let us people that know that we're downloading these books know that there's a fee and give us a fee? I'd gladly pay.
Pay?
Yeah,
I don't know if
Seriously.
we're allowed to.
I don't wanna
Yeah.
pay.
No,
I do.
yeah,
I
I don't
download them
know.
all the time. I
Yeah.
don't pay. It's free. It's a library.
Yeah.
Do you wanna pay if you come in and borrow a book off the shelf?
How much the charge?
yeah.
It ranges from like 75 cents to $2, depending on what it is.
Oh,
And
no
there's
way.
audiobooks
You'd be
on
paying
there.
that just on what I'm downloading, never mind.
Yeah. So,
Really?
I didn't realize.
Are the ebooks perm? Do you get to keep the ebook?
No.
you only
Or times out, or?
Well, if you put your Wi-Fi
Depends on how you do it, yeah.
How does one sign up for that?
you just need your library card number.
and a secret code.
Yeah.
What's-
We hold the secret code.
1, 2, 3.
But Overdrive is actually, to get a brand new book, kind of takes a while, and that's why I feel it's the usage is down. But I am looking into getting a grant so that we can have a streaming service where there aren't any wait times for it. So for people that want the newest book right now, and hopefully we'll get some more usage out of it. Trying to up.
I'm surprised that, I would have thought, I never knew that it even tracked, but if it's tracking it, I would think that that is the most widely used service in the library.
I don't know why I don't, like, the amount of money I spend on books and I read
Yeah.
almost all its e-books. I'm embarrassed right now.
I mean, we all drive. I mean, that's,
And you can get audio through
Yep,
the
audiobooks.
ebooks programs too.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Why don't you just die on? Kick me
oh,
in the-
wait a minute, I'm misreading this, I'm sorry. I'm talking audiobooks. Do they, those are the ones I download. Do they not, they don't charge you for those?
Oh, yes, they do.
They
Yeah, that's
do?
part of, it says ebooks, but it's really
Okay, it's E and
over
audio.
service.
Yeah,
Yeah.
wow.
This budget also reflects the wrong price for the septic. We were expecting to pay around 20,000 to have that installed, and it's gonna be under 10.
Well, it's somewhere between 10,000 and 15.
Oh, okay.
And we're in process right now, maybe we'll get a toilet that will flush more than 5 times.
Not legally.
Not weekly?
Legally.
No, legally, oh yes, it will be.
Oh,
I've
we
been-
got
I've-
permits.
I've
Earl has been
I've
driving
laying
all
awake
over the
nights
state.
for 2 years now.
Where am I missing the director's pay?
So,
Just
it's
under
in the
payroll expenses.
expense.
Director's pay?
Well, it's under
paid?
payroll.
We get paid?
Michelle. But that number does not reflect the $5,100 increase.
I thought he was named trustee.
I wish.
So how much is the payroll?
So it'll be about,
26.
can you do math?
31.1.
Okay, well, it says payroll expenses, it says cleaner beside it.
Oh, that's,
Oh, it's from the line above it. It
yeah,
says-
it's an added $2,000 annually. Those are kind of just our notes for what we discuss.
Yeah. This is an Excel, this was not done
Okay, now I can do the math.
through a professional accountant, obviously. It's very rough.
So your bottom line, 79,499 would be up by $5,100
But then down by about 8,000 for the septic.
because of the septic.
So down by 3,000.
Right, right, okay.
That's their level funded.
I'm just, in your letter here, you indicate that your income from the endowment that you're able to pull is 17.5.
Right
Is that
now,
correct? Right now.
without affecting the potential growth of it.
Yep. But under your income, it's not listed there. Unless I'm missing it.
We don't typically include that in our income unless we need to pull it, if that makes sense. Because we don't always pull that full amount. We try not to, quite honestly. We try to keep everything as low as possible. But we will be pulling more than the 17.5 this year because of the septic and the half of the painting we paid in this budget year. We paid 11 this year for the painting. And the furnace is still up in the air. Every time they come to check it, they tell us we might not get much more life out of it.
further discussion? Questions? I'm good with 40,000.
I'm good with the 37.
37 seems about right. Low.
I'm good with what was funded last year. Yeah,
Yeah. that's
I'm good with
just-
37.5.
37.5. Yep. I'm good with that.
Make that 37.5 work, otherwise if it goes on, it's the same quandary we had last year. That it's a warrant article, it'll show as a 1 in favor, 2 opposed.
Okay.
And we had this discussion last year during the public hearing, and it was said, no, we wanna go forth with what you had proposed, and at the deliberative session, it got changed, because you agreed to reduce it. I'd like to avoid that.
If I remember correctly, the complaint last year was that we were anticipating a lot of expenses, and you didn't want to increase the amount because these were anticipated. Now they're real, and they have fallen into our last year's budget and more this year. And so,
What we're asking for help with are the services that we're offering the town. Our salaries, the building, utilities. We're not asking that the town fixes anything that's wrong with the library. We take care of that. So we just want help with what the town gets back from us. What it breaks down to per taxpayer is about a cup of coffee per year. That $40,000. It's really not a substantial expense.
No
We keep
offense,
trying-
but everybody can say exactly the same thing about their budget, that it only impacts the town by 25 cents, or
Okay.
50 cents, or $1. They all add up.
Yes,
Bottom
that
line.
does.
What's the current state of the endowment? How much is in the endowment now, considering we just had an incredible
We have that
year
every
in the
year.
stock market?
I don't retain numbers. We had a meeting, but I do not remember the number. If it was 7 or 8, but I do not.
How many zeros after the 7 or whatever?
Just 2.
And
About 750 or so.
750,000
I would guess
in
right
an
now.
endowment, okay,
750,000?
right.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
And of that, without, see, that account is supposed to last in perpetuity. It's not
Exactly.
meant
Yes.
to run the
Yep.
library.
Yeah.
So without affecting its growth is the 17.5, which is huge. Last year, I wanna say it was 12 or 13.
mhm.
So,
And I agree, if, you know, your building is not gonna last forever, and at some
and it's not
point,
gonna suit our needs forever.
right, so when you need it, at least you'll, and even at that point, you're not gonna use your whole endowment.
Exactly.
I just think that 40,000, and it's only because I'm a neighbor, okay? And I see the amount of cars there, and I'm like, oh, glad to see they're using it, you know?
We do
Short
a lot
dollars.
for very little.
Yeah.
If you look at surrounding budgets, Greenville gets over $100,000. Wilton's 200 something.
Almost 300.
Yeah. Peterborough is huge, and we do a lot for very, very little. We're not asking for anything compared to.
I've actually been on the board, I don't know, was it 2 or 3 years? Seems like forever. And I was on the board in the 80s. And back then I thought this library is too small for the population of this town. And I think the population's doubled. And the library's still too small for the population of the town. I'd like to see a building or a facility, maybe, and maybe I'm dreaming, and I don't mean to be dropping this at a library board, but something that would serve the older people. You know, a complex that would have senior citizens.
All right, you're going off tangent here. Well, I'm talking a library. Your
Okay,
library,
no,
though,
a part of that is a library,
But-
okay? And I'm saying that. and
we're
I'm
talking
saying
your
that-
budget.
and let me talk, I have the floor, I'm sorry.
Excuse me?
I'm gonna leave, I'll leave. No, but I do want to, I've been working lately on the septic system because we had a problem with the septic system.
Mhm.
Okay, I've been on the board for 3 years. 2 years ago, the septic froze. A year ago, it froze. This year, we're getting a new septic. We took it upon ourselves to do all the engineering, get the engineering done, blah, 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 blah. The tank went in today, and I'm going, one thing less that I have to think about.
For now.
You know, because the ladies don't care about the septic system, they'd rather deal with other things. And I'm thinking, why am I doing this? And I'm doing it for old people, and I'm doing it for the young people. And while I was there this morning, I see these little kids come in. And I'm going, there's the future of our town, there's the future of America. You know, not that we have to do anything for them, but isn't it nice that we can provide, I would like to say, a better place based on the fact that it's an old building, you know, we could use newer facilities incorporated with other facilities this town could use. That's why I brought up the other part of it. And at some point, we need to do some looking into the future and making some plans for the future. That's all I'll say.
Right, that's not this meeting. This meeting here is to focus on getting your warrant article approved for what you need for a budget, okay? Expanding the library, a new facility, whatever. What is it that you can expound upon that is the need of the library and how the town benefits even more than what you've already expressed? And we're not,
So, I mean, a small increase each year would make sure that as utilities and things increase,
Mhm.
maybe we have to hire more people because we have more programs, more people that need to be served in the building. Right now, I'm there by myself most times, just to keep the budget down. So a little increase each year would then help to make sure that our funds that we have can then still increase. And then
And
at
we
some
can
point,
build on what we're
we
offering.
could perhaps build a brand new building, not asking the town to even help with that, but then to use our own funds to then hopefully make a larger library as the needs increase.
let me rephrase my question, maybe that might help a little bit. You're talking about that the budget needs to increase a little bit each year. It has. When I was sitting where these gentlemen are now, it was a $30,000 budget, and we kept saying, you know, you should be asking for more. No, that's all we need. And so then they have asked for more. What I'm trying to ask the question is, can you tell us, hey, you know, our users have increased X amount. Our programs have increased X amount. We're providing more services. I think things like that will,
Well, we are providing a program a month, not always well attended, but we try. We are offering museum passes now. Last year, we had state parks, the Mill Yard Museum, and the MFA. We changed them this year because prices went up on some of them and they weren't used as much. So now we have state parks, the Cheshire Children's Museum, and the MFA still. I lost my train of thought.
take your time, deep breath.
But I think the main
Well,
thing
you're
we
on
need
the
to
right track.
increase is, I think, the hours that the employees
Yes.
are working in the library.
I think
Just so
we
that
need
we
the hours
can
that
be
we're
there
open.
more often for the patrons, maybe offer more hours. So we're expecting basically our payroll to go up, just so that we can have more programs for teens, more programs for children on the weekends when parents want to come out and do things,
A lot
not
of
during the
people will
week,
go to Townsend
because they're
because
open
they
more.
have more hours
Yeah.
that are convenient to when people want to get to the library. We're only open 24 hours a week, and we do the best we can to be open when people want to, but we do want to eventually expand that now that we have the energy of people that want to be there more.
It would be great if we had some idea how many people actually use it,
We do.
as
Our-
opposed to how many things you offer.
Yeah,
You know?
the
You could
annual
offer
report-
100 things and nobody shows up, it's,
So
It's
New
a bad
Hampshire does
investment.
New Hampshire does an annual report every year, and they're about to release the survey that then goes out to every public library director, and then they fill in those numbers and they make it into a spreadsheet, which is kind of what John was showing us at the beginning of the meeting there. So that report will be available by the end of January, and that tells us, you know, we count everything up, all the tallies and things that we've taken over the year. How many people have walked through the doors, how many checkouts we've had, how many
Since you've taken
programs,
over,
all
have you
that.
seen an increase in people signing up for library cards and coming in?
Yeah. That too.
Any
Every-
idea how many?
I mean, there's been at least 20 just since October. Just new people from town coming in. I'm new, I wanna use your services, I wanna check out a card, things like that. So yeah, we'll have all those statistics by the end of
That's kind
January.
of what we need to.
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah.
but it's just, yeah, it doesn't fall within, you know, your parameters for then the article. But end of January is when those numbers come out from the state.
Yeah, I mean, it's real helpful to compare last year to this year to
Yeah.
prior years and show some sort of progress, or this is where you should be focusing your efforts.
And we had, almost 7,000 checkouts last year in 2019.
But that number by itself is not meaningful.
Right.
I don't have the number before that,
Right.
unfortunately.
All right, my question, and it could change my vote, so answer. The line that says painting, you have maintenance repairs, you have $12,000 in there. Of that $12,000, how much is for painting?
That was just,
That is just half of the
deposit.
painting.
that was only half the painting. So that was the deposit, that was in 1 year, and then the next year we spent another 10,000.
So,
Total of 21,000, wasn't
It
it?
was 21,000.
Yeah.
okay, so, all right, so you paid 10,000, which means you have $11,000 to pay off this year.
It's done.
It's been
Right,
in the
right,
budget
in
year.
this budget year.
It was all paid off last year,
Half and half.
Half and half.
so.
Your
ha-
fiscal year, June to
June,
July,
yeah.
yeah, they're on that different cycle.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you're requesting $11,000 in the budget you just gave us here. 11,000 of the 12,000 is for painting.
But if I understood you earlier and just clarify this, I thought the painting and your septic whatnot is what you were saying you were taking out of your
Right.
other fund.
And that's why
Okay.
Right,
that's why I'm trying to get an answer. So you have 12,000 in maintenance repair line item.
Yes.
Of that 12, you're saying 11 of it was for painting. Okay. I'll approve $40,000.
That's fine.
Thank you.
You're welcome. What I did is I took out the stuff that, in my opinion, should be paid for out of your endowment. Your painting and your septic,
Right.
okay? Then I took out what you assumed would come from your small business Saturdays and your grants. And that brings you right at about $39,500. So I will approve $40,000 from the town, because that way the town is paying for what the town is getting. So, thank you.
Thank you.
I got to do the math. So, and it's one of those things. I mean, when you look at all this, the only huge increases were for capital expenditures.
Right.
And, that is something that, like you said, I mean, yes, it'd be great someday that you could write out a check for a brand new building out of your endowment. But right now, your endowment should also be helping to maintain the building you have, and the people should be paying for the services that the building is supplying to them. So I appreciate everything you guys do down there. It's you do a lot out of a very small building, and I know you work very hard. So I will vote with David on $40,000.
Thank you.
and thanks for having this meeting with us, because it's really difficult for us to express numbers, because we're not number people.
We're word people.
So yeah, thank you for asking questions and clarifying that.
Can I get the whole bunch from you?
All right, you in favor of that?
I'm good.
Are we
Have a
three
good
for
night.
three on that then?
You are 3 for 3.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Nice to meet you. I'm Michelle Pelletier.
So I took that
That was way,
I took this full number here and the 11 over here, plus those, and the 39.5. Yeah,
I mean,
I just, yeah,
Maybe next time we'll come in with some real numbers, some justification.
Mm-hmm.
Is it really?
Yeah, well, that's
Got
what,
the, got the
that's what he
full?
claims, yeah.
Again? Everybody
My
did.
wife said the same thing.
Everybody did. Oh, no.
Did you get my text message?
You're on the hook.
You're on the hook for another 3 years.
Great, can I get it in writing? 'Cause I told him it was done last night.
It's 5.
That's what I sent you a message yesterday.
I saw that. Let me get this out of the way too, I got those statistics for the quarter, so,
Oh, awesome.
actually, I can't say I got one.
I don't know, we have them on the agenda, and here it comes. Here it comes.
There you go. Well, you wanted them, right?
2 weeks ago.
Well, I can't give them you before the year ends. And it does take time to compile them.
Press what? I knew it. I knew it.
She's on her A game, I'll give her that.
That's what I'm looking at.
Again, Wendy is in hopes of taking over for me, and she's already building
Sorry,
numbers
my
for you,
fault.
so that's a plus. Now, here's your,
Make a copy.
this is budget right here.
What do you,
Yeah, these are just statistics.
with that?
Yeah, these are just stats, these aren't.
Yeah, this is what you want.
Yeah, we,
Yeah, you want.
Yeah, you want these guys, I'm sorry.
Yeah, this is
I
smart.
sidetracked.
How many stats you have?
Our 2020 budget. You guys already have
You
this.
could simply, okay.
We have not seen.
Those are statistics for the selectmen
You got
that
all
they
three.
had asked us to provide.
I'm looking for the budget. This is the budget. Money.
That's right here. You know, I digress. There you go, here's your budget. So we come up year after year and it seems to be somewhat of a difference. So I can throw the disclaimer out now before I get into it. We're a warrant article, but we still like to present our budget so that you guys can understand that we do everything we can to be fiscally responsible and reduce our budget year after year. But this year it went up, which is not a common occurrence for us, but considering our budget proposal, I don't think that it's anything that's crazy numbers that are out of control. Sorry about that.
you have to leave.
Yeah, no.
That would have been good.
Yep, sorry, just accept it. I'm out here. I think it's, and again, I did quick math on the way up, but I think it's 1.15 increase, which still.
I'm not seeing that. I'm seeing a substantial increase unless my numbers are wrong.
You what, sir? Increase?
98,000 and we were 84,971.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot more than 1%.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was about to ask. I don't have last year's number, so.
84,971.
Yeah, so our overall budget went up about $8,000. However, the increase is due to the fact that our earned income is anticipated to be less next year than we anticipated even this year. So what happens is all of our earned income is what helps reduce our overall budget, which then reduces it to the towns we serve. So this last year, we had a shortfall.
Can I just interrupt you 1 second?
Absolutely.
You're saying numbers that I'm hearing, but I'm seeing something different.
Okay.
You
You
were
don't see
saying,
any earned income on that.
no, that's not what I'm saying. Let's agree so that I'm clear. You're asking for this year's warrant article at $98,065.
Correct.
Okay,
And 69 cents.
and 69 cents. And our budget last year was 84,971, which is
39
approximately $14,000, not an $8,000 increase. Am I correct?
You are correct.
All right.
So, that being said, looking at our overall budget, it increased by $8,000. Not your portion. The overall budget for us last year was $390.50. This year's 398, 550, I'm staying correct again, it's 500 more. So 8,500 more than last year. However, taking into consideration that we lowered our earned income, that's where you get also the deficit, which we need to increase the town's portion to make up that difference. Does that
Why are
make
you
sense?
I'm assuming you're referring to the line item called Comstar income.
Correct.
So why are you anticipating that your income next year would be less than what
So-
the services are?
Our forward-thinking budget is always based basically upon our last year income. So if we have a good year in income, it always helps offset our next year. We had a few good years, which is why we always kept the budget low. However, due to everybody's insurance premiums going up and not meeting those right away, we don't get a lot of income, I don't say a lot of income, we don't get the income that we anticipate due to the fact that patients just can't pay it, they're on a payment plan, so we don't have that income right off. Does that make sense?
Do
So
you have
last year-
stats for what your 2019?
Yes, I have rough numbers, because our budget isn't in yet because of our statements, I don't yet. So I'm looking at about 199 for earned income.
And what did you, I'm just talking all the way down,
So
like
looking
here,
at-
under your proposed budget,
Yep.
do you have something that you track for the 2019?
Mm-hmm. Well, what are you asking? 2019, our earned income was 200.
No, these line items here. In other words, how did you do in 2019 with the budget for the monies that was?
I have a rough one, you wanna copy it?
I just,
See, every year it's different. You guys don't want it, and you do want it. We do, and we would go and rough that out. Yeah, 15.4.
How many copies there? All of them four, Isaac?
Everybody?
While we're waiting, maybe you can answer the question, why does Greenville pay so much less than New Ipswich?
It's done per capita. So as soon as the new census numbers come out, then that will change as well, but we're still basing all the numbers on the latest per capita numbers.
per capita or census?
I'm sorry, the census
Census.
numbers. Right.
Thank you.
Check off the ones I've had.
And the new census numbers will be out
Yeah.
2021, we'll start utilizing those, but, it's been like that since the beginning of time that we've been here. We've always been a small community, and it's just always the way it has been. I can't want to, yeah, Mike. Disregard that 1.15, apparently I, screwed that up.
Thank you.
My bad.
Thank you. So if you look at our, that's a comparison, right? Is that what I gave you
Can
guys?
you ask the question?
So looking
'Cause
at
I'm not
that,
asking that, right?
that's where you see the
What his budget
390,
was
50.
compared to what he, okay.
Yeah.
All right,
I'm sorry.
that's okay. What David's looking for is what your 2019 budget was compared to what your estimated actuals are year end.
Oh, I won't have those till next month, when you get the new statement out. I mean, I know what we, spent, but we don't even know what our income from Comstar is until the next statement comes out. Does that make sense?
It would if you needed an exact number, but like,
I
Most
gave you a rough estimate, that's why December doesn't, I don't even have the December numbers, but I can look and I know it's about,
what am I looking at?
from what I gather, it's about 19,717, but some of that may have still included some of November's numbers.
What's 19.7?
For my income, to give me my total for.
I'm not looking for income. I'm not looking for income. You've given us a budget.
Correct.
You're saying this is what we figure we're gonna
Mm-hmm.
need to operate. On the flip side of that, when you have a budget, that's expenditures.
You wanna know what our actual expenditures are?
Yes.
Yeah.
How close are you budgeting?
So if your budget for 2019 was 39,000 or 390,000, how close are you to that? Did you underspend 390,000? Did you overspend 390,000?
Well, we overspent, but not So like, we also have capital expenses that we spend, which doesn't show up in our budget. So like, the ambulance payments, that doesn't show up in the budget, because we don't do that, we take it out of our equipment account.
Right.
Same thing with Zoll monitors, we just bought new Zoll monitors. That's an expense of several $1,000s a month, that doesn't come out of the budget. So do we really overspend what we?
You don't count those because those are like
Correct.
capital reserve, but just for
Correct.
this budget, for what you budgeted, what were your expenses in 2019?
$375 rough,
Fine.
somewhere right
That's-
around there, 375 rough. That doesn't take into consideration a couple of things that are still coming out, or haven't rectified on this budget here. So we're pretty close to spending, but again, it's the offset of the income that we didn't meet, that's where that deficit comes into.
So what did, approximately, like you just said, for, what do you think your
200.
income,
200.
200, for
Right.
2019?
Yeah.
Correct.
So you're at $70,000 shortfall.
About, a little less than that. And again, we expected that, that was the whole point of it, we didn't like, oh geez, you know, we went over. We expected that to keep the reduced cost so that we're not just acquiring a kitty fund, if you will. If we earn more money than we anticipate, well, that should go back to effect to offset our next year's budget, which is pretty much what it did. But this year, we didn't earn as much as we had hoped, so that shortfall was a little bigger than we had anticipated, which is why the budget kind of has to kind of meet somewhere in the middle.
So my question is, if you last year you budgeted you were gonna earn 270, you only earned 200. What makes you assume you're gonna make 260 next year?
I think a lot of it goes on the kind of the laws of average based upon the call volume we have and the amount of income that we've been getting. We know we'll still be short. We're not afraid of being short, but we also just can't, you know, go bankrupt. You know, it's not that I'm saying that, that's bad words, but we anticipate that we have to continually maintain an equipment account so that when we do purchase a new ambulance, we have money to offset that. If we just can exhaust that, then we're gonna be coming back to the town and say, look, we need to, you know, increase our equipment fund by $60,000, or that's just not feasible. So we try to keep it reasonable with cost so that our income can offset that.
But your equipment fund is being funded through this,
Correct, at 45,000. However, we're also, I'm sorry, go ahead.
but now you bump that up another 10.
Correct, because we're also expending more out of the equipment fund, like when we bought the defibs, which we hadn't anticipated being an expense this year. So that still has to be made up at some point. I mean, next year, will it be 45,000? Probably not.
I'm trying to figure out.
What this increase is, because I think
15.41%.
15.41. That's quite a bit.
It's just different every year. I'd have had much more numbers if I knew what you guys were looking for. Last year I came in, nobody wanted us to come, this is a warrant article.
We always want you to come, we always want as much information as you can provide,
Except for last year.
always.
Okay. I know you do. You were here last year.
And if John's here, he wants more than I do.
I just, when we came to the Finance Advisory Committee last year, if you remember correctly, we waited, people were getting up to leave, they said, you know, I wanna go home. I'm like, well, we stayed, can you stay? And we finally did, and like, wait, you guys weren't, why have we been doing this? And out we went, like, okay.
That was the budget committee. We're different.
Okay. I wasn't aware.
Well,
I'm
like you
sorry.
said, it
the-
changes year to year.
Well,
Sometimes
no.
we get too much, sometimes we get in the
It
right
does, like last
format.
year is
and-
different than this year. and-
Right, but
Wait a
going
minute,
forward.
you as the voter to be informed,
Yep.
be informed. A budget committee sets the town budget, not the selectmen. That was abolished by the voters 2 years ago. So now we have a finance advisory committee that is advisory to the Board of Selectmen.
I understand that, Dave, I'm just saying, last year when we came,
Yeah.
we were basically told, see you
Right,
later.
and
we
again,
don't want
and the reason being is the certain members on that committee wanted to get up on the budget committee, no longer wanted to sit and listen to what was going on. That happened on more than one evening.
Yeah.
So when they leave,
Victim
we
dilemma.
really can't, because it wasn't our meeting. It was their meeting. So we as a select board really couldn't do too much
Yeah.
because it wasn't our budget to set.
Yep.
So that's what happened, and that's why things got dismissed last
Yeah,
year.
I'm sorry, I don't have a lot of supporting stuff, I just figured if
Yeah.
you guys wanna see the budget, we'd come and explain a
Yeah.
little bit about it.
The biggest challenge as the selectman now is to be putting forth a warrant article that's increased, 15%, whatever that number worked out to.
And again, a lot of
So,
it comes down to the reduced amount of income. There's no way around that. I mean, it's not like the budget's astronomically over budget and anything like that. It's just the income that we anticipated is less than we got.
So,
And some of that, and that may change too. I mean, there's laws out there right now with Medicare trying to do cost analysis. Everybody's gonna have to come up with the numbers over the next several years. We're just lucky enough we don't need to provide those exact numbers now, but next year we probably will. With every department that does it will.
so really what it comes down to is even though your call volume has stayed steady or even increased, along with that, your number of non-paying travelers has also increased.
It could also be non-transports as well. I mean, the variable's large for why the income isn't always there.
So if you go out on a call and you don't transport, there's no bill that goes out?
Correct. That has been looked at. Some people feel that we should do that. I'll be honest with you, I'm against it. We're always gonna get called for emergency. I mean, someone drops, we're gonna get called. I mean, it just is what it is. But you're gonna have I don't wanna say poor, but you're gonna have the people that don't have insurance, they're self-employed, they can't afford it, they're gonna, put their kid in a car and drive them to the hospital. Is it smart, is it safe? No, but that's how people get by. And I don't wanna see somebody denied medical care because they can't afford it. That is never the intention of us. And that concerns me. I've been upfront about that since the beginning we went billing. I was always worried that people wouldn't call us. There are people that just can't afford to pay it. We have a hardship program. There's a way around that. I'd rather get $20 from 1,000 people over the course of the next however many years than to put somebody in bankruptcy because they can't afford to pay an ambulance call because they had to provide care for their family.
but would you say, just based on the number of 260 that you predicted and received roughly 200, that's roughly 25% of the people are not paying or are not insured? Because I thought everybody now had to be insured somewhere.
It's not just that. You gotta remember too is deductibles. So if you have a $10,000 deductible, you can go on ambulance calls, but if you don't meet your deductible, the bill's not getting paid by the insurance company. They expect you to pay that. So you can't afford to write a bill for $2,500 to.
So basically, your largest call volume is a non-billable fall and lift assist. So somebody,
So
Biggins falls down at home and can't lift himself up. That's a non-billable.
correct. I do wanna clarify some of those numbers though. That's actually dispatch reason, not necessarily what we get called for. We could get called for a diabetic emergency and show up and guy's a heroin overdose, or you can get called for difficulty breathing, find out he's diabetic. I mean,
Yeah, but still,
so
I'm
those
I'm
numbers
guessing,
aren't-
it's still, the percentage of error on this would have to be drastic
Yeah,
for it
it's
not to be
definitely
your
not.
number one call. So really, your number one reason for having to go out to a residence is a non-billable call. Okay.
Which,
Well,
Again,
these are things
people
that
don't-
I'll let you know. I didn't know this, so the average public isn't going to know this. So when they sit there and go, "Why is this happening?" and these are the things and that's why it's so great that we're getting these now, is we can tell them, look,
some of the things too is people don't call us because they want us, they call us because they need us.
Yeah.
And, there's, end of life care that goes on with hospice and other things too. We get called a lot of times for those, and it may just be to pick somebody up and put them from bed. A lot of these calls used to be years and years ago, used to be fire department lift assist, but it just transitioned into.
If you look at another number though, John, of 122 calls, 50 were no transports, so almost half, 45%.
yeah. Well, I'm looking at the year. I don't think you even have the yearly. I'm looking 488 calls, you had the quarter, 488 calls for the year, 184 were no transports. So, and that's what I'm saying. I mean, your next two categories, which are serious categories, don't even add up, or just add up to, don't even add up to your lift assist.
Yeah.
Can you explain that to me? Because I'm a little,
What's that?
the title of that statistic says hospital transported to in total.
Because
So-
there's 30 mutual aids at the bottom. The year end, you must be looking
Okay,
at. Does
okay.
that make sense now, right?
Now it
588
does.
versus the,
Yeah, mutual aid will total your calls.
that's what you get, your
Yeah.
518
Thank you.
versus. I looked at that this morning too. It adds up.
I think,
So, what's your, percentage of recovery through Comstar per billing?
I wish I had that answer right now. I don't. I look at it every year, and I just haven't got those numbers yet. I can let you know that. It's not, it's average, if not above average in some. Like Medicare, always gonna pay, but they only pay a portion of, a very small portion of the bill. And that's the end. The rest falls on the patient to pay, which obviously when they're on Medicare, they can't afford to pay it. The same thing with Medicaid as well. They're already on a low income, they really can't afford to pay the bill. So most of those go to hardship, and we just approve the write-off. So that kind of hurts the average of return.
And about,
Private insurance is usually the best.
dollar-wise, how much are you writing off that Comstar says is uncollectible?
We send stuff to collections too, so there's quite a bit in collections that goes there. You know, we still routinely get people that go out and try to get a house and get a car, and suddenly the bill gets paid through collections, but that hurts us because we're only getting 66% instead of 100. But that may be years down the line. Eventually, we do wind up recouping some of that, but there's a high number that's just literally people don't pay.
Okay. And what percentage is Comstar charging you for each?
5%.
5%?
Yeah, about, oh gosh, I want to say about 7, 8 years ago, they wanted to go to 10%, and I just basically negotiated that,
Yeah.
kept it at 5, and we
Five's
haven't
reasonable.
changed since.
Yeah, that's reasonable.
Yeah, it's better than average for most other billing companies, which is why we stayed with Comstar as long as we have. I will get you the collection rate numbers for all the insurance companies as
Okay.
soon as I get those numbers, but I won't get those until after we close out our year end, which
Okay.
actually was today,
Yep,
so.
that'd be great, thank you.
A lot of number crunching.
sounds to me like we're servicing our aging population, which is probably most of the fall downs, and our aging population is probably the least able to pay.
I would agree with that. There are, again, some of the no transports, I mean, we could show up in a car accident and treat 5 people. That kind of 5 calls for service, even though it's 1 call. And, you know, with seatbelts and, you know, airbags, majority of the time, we're not transporting. You know, knock on wood, we don't really have the real high injury-prone accidents, which is good. Years ago, it wasn't so much.
Yeah, but if you look at, and again, I'm just interpreting what these things mean, but you can't say that it's all for elderly people.
No,
No.
it's
No,
not,
no,
not
Yeah,
at all.
And again, I threw in too, like I said, you could have, you know, end-of-life hospice care is one of the big ones, because we've done that. You know what, we don't mind going to do it, yeah, it's a cost, it is what it is, we're not gonna recoup money, but at the end of the day, we are here to help our community, and that's kind of one of the things. It costs. You know, and again, averaging it out for the budget, it's less than $20 per person in the budget. If you take your per capita numbers and you divide it out for the 98,000, it's, like I said, I think it's, I don't remember exactly what it is, it might be 19, might be 17, it's under $20.
What's MVC?
Motor vehicle.
Thank
Yeah, that's it. You add motor vehicle and respiratory, and you only come up to 90. It's still less than the top non-billing.
Well, your biggest jump is in your equipment fund
Correct.
of 10,000.
Yeah, and again, that offsets because of the income that we didn't earn in, with the expenses that we have out from that fund. You know, we're buying the ambulance, we bought the defibs, and we're depleting that account because we're offsetting the earned income that we're not.
How much is in the account?
It's a little over 100,000, I believe, a little over 100,000.
And what's your anticipation for the next need for an ambulance?
I don't think we need one right now.
But
I
what-
would say
you must
probably
be
the next-
planning
probably
that.
the next couple of years, we really need to. The issue we had was we ran into, probably about 2016, we ran into an ambulance that just continually had maintenance costs. It was costing more money in maintenance to repair it and get it fixed than it was if we just bit the bullet, went out and got another one. But it was 3 years after we had just bought one. We never do that. We always try to break them out every 6 years or so to buy a new ambulance. So now we have the ambulances are 3 years apart. So you can keep putting that off, which is fine. I don't think we need to go buy a new ambulance. We have a 2013 and a 2016 right now, and it just doesn't behoove us to do that. But the longer you go out, that 2013 is gonna start increasing with the maintenance cost.
Right, so if you were looking at a 6-year cycle, your 13 should have been replaced
Correct.
last year or this coming year.
Correct.
You have 100,000 in there, you're asking for another 55. What's it cost to replace an ambulance?
A lot more than that. Yeah, we usually put down about $80,000 and then we finance the rest. But that's where I'm getting at. That income has to be there to we can't just, we can't afford to pay it. Never been that way before. We've
Mhm.
always continually attempted to reduce the tax dollars. Nobody wants a big budget. It's never been that way. We've always tried to keep our budget low, but at some point, and he's been there a long time. I've been preaching this for year after year after year. We have to increase the equipment fund so we don't get into a position where we need to buy a new ambulance. We can't afford to buy a new ambulance. Because when you need to do it, you need to do it. And then once you wipe it out, now what? You have zero in there to go towards another new ambulance for
Mhm.
how many years after that? So if you don't have any forward thinking, you're in over your head.
I agree,
And that's why we're trying to do that now.
but what's it cost for an ambulance?
$198,000 is the last one I spent.
So
How much?
200?
So I bought one in 2018 on a leftover 2017 Ford F450 chassis, 4-wheel drive, and when all was said and done, $198,000.
200,000.
I think we spent 235 on the last one. But again, it's got some safety features on it with the back end that lowers when you open the doors. Like 2 women on during the day. The suspension was $10,000 just of it, air ride suspension, or liquid springs suspension in that one.
Which is $12,000 by itself.
Yeah, I think it was 235 again. Talking quite a few years ago. I believe that's what it was. Nobody likes to increase the budget, me more than anybody, but I think it's time we have to.
Well, it has increased every year, so it's not like, no, it really has, be honest.
I'm pretty honest, you go back and look at our previous years, it
Well,
hasn't
yeah.
been catastrophic. Go to 2018. There we go. He does this to me every time.
I'm just,
What was that 2018 budget? I think I have it. No, I do. 2017 was 119,200.
Say that again?
2017, I showed 119,200 for our total town portions. That includes Greenville and Ipswich, I'm sorry.
Right.
So looking at, let's go to 2019.
Let's go to the year that you asked me to look up.
Okay, I don't have 2018, so I have everything fine.
84,370.
So 84,370, and then 2019 went 84,971. So yeah, you're right, we went up $700.
And what was it before?
2017 was 84,370, and that went up, I guess, 600 over 2 years. And then 2016 looked like probably one of the biggest jumps from 81 to 84. So it
I'm
went up
thinking there was
3,000.
one, and I will agree it should have gone up, and it was significant. And that was the year that you guys actually started to have an equipment fund, because prior to that you did not.
We always did, it was very low. I think it was 5
Maybe
or
that's what it
10,000.
was, but I remember you came in and it
We
was a
just- yeah,
significant
I think it went
increase.
15 yeah, I think it went up to 15 at some point, and then it went up to 25, somewhere in there. And it's just, looking at these, it was 35 and 17, actually it was 30 and 16, and 35 and 17. So 18, unfortunately, I don't have that number, so I don't know what it was in 18. I probably would have been more prepared for the past 20 years if I knew exactly what we wanted. But again, I think we've been pretty, Comstar income in 2016, we went 180, and we actually got 191, which is why, again, we offset that following year with 190. Yeah, so 16 to 17, excuse me, was a 1.03 increase. Because it went up $4,000. But yes, it apparently has gone up over the years, but I'm not saying it's not going up, I just say it's not going up significantly. A couple $1,000 a year.
Yeah,
I
that's
think
nothing.
we've certainly
Right.
tried to maintain that this year. Unfortunately, it's a little more than it has been consistently over the past few years, but I think we justify it, I guess.
Question? Thank you.
No problem. You guys good? All right. Thank you, guys.
Use a number to quickly find online. That.
I'm thinking we're discussing individual rates for the RSA, it's a non-public. It's not in public.
Yeah, I'm just saying, so that's what it's increase.
Which one, what's the PR?
So that's what, like these were the quick population numbers I could come up with offline.
Yeah,
So just dividing that's what it was. And that's what it jumps to, 250 per person. Jump. 257. So.
I was thinking you had something else, I'm sorry.
Oh, that's all right. Oh no, you talking no.
Yes.
No, that
Did
wasn't.
you get Tufts medical ID cards today? We already got hers. From Tufts. What am I doing?
We don't have benefits.
Yeah, so he was talking.
Yeah.
What's the one?
So the 55,000 for the equipment fund goes into the fund
that they have about $100,000.
Right. Yeah, it's like a capital reserve fund for them
Yeah.
to buy equipment. So just quickly finding numbers online.
Yeah.
That was population of Greenville, population of Webster.
That's what-
$18.95 per person. Jumping to $2.50 per person increase over 1 year. And it's tough, but I understand what he's saying.
Do we have a choice, though?
Well, no, not unless we were to
Yeah, I mean,
look at something else, and then what kind of costs are we looking at there? So, and obviously we don't have the time to do it this year.
yeah.
Harvard Pilgrim.
It is hard, yeah. Tops is sending out cards anyway.
Well, it's kind of late in the cycle.
The overlap.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds kind of sole source to me. Okay.
Hasn't changed, in case you don't have a
First
copy.
shoot, yeah.
There's a backside.
Throwing
It's the
stuff
same-
around.
It's the same, Scott. The total's the same.
Yeah, hasn't changed.
Oh,
Has not changed. Just want to make sure everybody had a copy of it. Didn't already?
Thank you.
You didn't want that, did you?
I hate the way they
Just pass those down to you.
just tell the library.
Yeah, I finally get the reasonable, sorry, I think it's a reasonable language.
Gather you're doing a PowerPoint.
Short one, because I don't believe
Might
in
wanna
death by PowerPoint.
Kill that light a little bit.
Thank you.
Set the mood.
So when last we met, there was some concern about having enough justification for some of the requests that I was making as far as the budget goes. And I believe I sent everybody out backup documentation electronically.
Yep.
And basically, so the request that I'm making is based on an analysis of what other communities are paying for these same positions in the southern New Hampshire area. And at this point, I'm getting feedback from employees and just what I'm seeing in other towns is that we're a bit behind the curve to be competitive as far as what we pay for some of these positions, including the position that I hold. And, you know, for me personally, I believe investing in your people is what makes an organization great. And they're what makes an organization work on a day-to-day basis. And my fear is, in the environment that we're in and what we're seeing with municipalities, and I stated this at our other meeting 3 weeks ago, is that with the low unemployment rate in New Hampshire, wages are ticking up across the board in pretty much any position you can think of. When you have McDonald's actually starting people at $15 an hour to be cashiers and cook food, it certainly makes you wonder what we need to pay for people that we ask to provide professional services on a day-to-day basis in delivery of supporting the town. The other concern that I have is in this low unemployment environment is if we do lose employees, that our ability to replace them is going to be an arduous task. And in the end, we're going to end up needing to increase the salaries anyway to attract potential candidates, and we've already seen that in a couple of instances in surrounding towns. And we still would be faced with the cost of recruiting them and training them, and then for whatever period of time that a vacuum is created, that somebody leaves a position, is a detriment to the community as well. You also lose all the institutional knowledge that the people that are in the positions today have about the town of New Ipswich. And that's not easy to replace when you have people that have been in jobs for several years. When you lose that knowledge and somebody has to come in and try to start from scratch, you know, there is a learning curve. It takes somebody a good 12 to 18 months to really come back up to speed after you've hired them. And any new hire, there's risks associated with it. While you try to do a very good job screening and qualifying and interviewing people, there is always a chance that the person you lost is better than the one you're able to backfill with. When I took a look at the overall budget for the town offices, including most of my increases are around wages for the employees, the overall impact on the tax rate would be about 9 cents. And I just wanted to put it in perspective that people understood and could relate to. Oops, sorry. So some of the information that I provided everybody, MRI, if you're not familiar with them, Municipal Resources Incorporated, they do a lot of consulting and recruiting for towns in New Hampshire and Massachusetts. And they did a survey in the summer of 2019 for the town of Wyndham. And they compared 19 towns in the southern New Hampshire area and what they were paying. And I did a brief synopsis here of what those were. So the position that I hold, those towns range from $65,395 to $149,073 as far as salary range for a town administrator. Interesting enough, that range that you see there is for the town of Hooksett. So Hooksett has the lowest, Hooksett has the highest, or most broad range for what they pay as far as town administrator. When you look at the average, you know, ZipRecruiter has some statistics where you can do an average on a particular position. And in New Hampshire right now, they're saying that the average town administrator makes $82,000 a year. The average town size in New Hampshire is about 5,700, so we're a little smaller than your typical town. And when I say 5,700, that includes the average of Concord, Nashua, Keene, you know, Portsmouth, all averaged in there, which all kind of tick it up a little bit. So I would say that New Ipswich is pretty much the median point in as far as population goes. Some of the surrounding towns in our area, Jaffrey, Milford, Amherst, all pay their town administrator over $100,000 a year. Wilton, which is where I came from, pays their current town administrator $84,000. Had I stayed there, I'd probably be making about $87,000 this year. And I'm not asking for numbers like that at all. On the land use staff, again, the range on those 19 towns ranges from just over $13 a thousand all the way up to almost $32 an hour. But the typical range, when you net it all out, is in that $18 to $24 an hour range. And my budget right now for our 2 land use people is for 31 hours a week, which is an increase of 3 hours each a week, and a $20 an hour rate of pay. When you look at the bookkeeper and accountant positions, the ranges are somewhat similar, a little higher on the bookkeeper and accountant, but again, the typical range is in the 19 to 24, and I'm asking ours to be adjusted up to 20. So at the typical range that you see out there, I'm asking for increases for our employees that are actually at the lower end of a range that's out there in the market. One of the things that I think makes it difficult in New Ipswich is we do not have a set established step and grade system, if you will, for any of our positions that most towns would rely on and be able to point to. And so you know where to start people, where they would be at midpoint after they've been in the position for several years, and what the high point would be had they been here 10 or 20 years. That doesn't exist in New Ipswich. Most towns have that, so you have a set of parameters that you hire and people with and have them progress through that range as their experience and performance dictates. Right now, everything that we do is very arbitrary, based on the person, the position, the budget, and how we're feeling on a given day. I think on what we decide to start people at and what we think the position is worth. And one of the things that I caution people to do, and this is really a long standing belief with me, is we need to be looking at what the position is worth. And if we start looking at the people or trying to personalize what we're doing, then we're really starting to dilute what a structured pay scale would be for the town. How we position people, how we reward people once they're in positions, whether we retain people or terminate people because of performance or lack of skills or whatever, is a totally separate issue that we would handle on a case-by-case basis. So my recommendation is to look at what the positions are, what the responsibilities are, and what similar towns in southern New Hampshire are paying their employees today in those ranges. And one of the challenges for any municipality is that typically we do have a tendency to be in that 2 to 3% COLA and merit increase type of scenario annually for our employees. But there are times where you have to look at a broader picture, and every 4 to 5 years you really need to be looking at a more comprehensive salary analysis to see what the market is bearing, and that varies with the economy. And sometimes you do your analysis and you find that you're right where you need to be, even after 4 or 5 years. And other times when you're in an economy like ours that's growing, wages are going up, human resources are getting to be scarcer. In order to retain and keep people, we need to be competitive or we're going to lose them. And local towns have already experienced that. Several weeks ago, Temple had an article that came up in the Monadnock Ledger about some of their experiences recently with their employees that they hired and then quickly lost to another town because the we're willing to pay them, you know, $2 or $3 more an hour than Temple was. And Temple had to take some corrective action to prevent that from happening again. Oops. So the other thing that I'm asking for is an increase in hours for the land use people. Right now, they're each budgeted for 28 hours, and I'm asking for an increase of 3 hours each, and quite frankly, we could probably use more than that. The only reason I picked the 3 extra hours is keeping it at 31 keeps us under the threshold where they're eligible for benefits. So at 31 hours, they're not entitled to health care, retirement, etc. I don't know whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. Honestly, it's a great thing from a budget perspective. But once again, if you want to retain employees, sometimes the benefits package is as important or even more important than the hourly rate of pay. Looking at the statistics for 2019, both the land use people were actually averaging more than the 28 hours originally budgeted for them. And the land use clerk was averaging just over 31 hours, and the land use administrator was averaging about 34 and a half, and some of that was due to backfilling in the town clerk's office as well, which hopefully moving forward, since we have a new deputy, would be kept to a minimum, if at all. As far as some of the things that aren't getting done here because of the limited hours, a lot of the files in this building are not well organized, not kept up to date, because there just isn't enough time to do it. And anybody that's been in any town hall and understands the years of accumulation of files, you've had turnover in people, and being able to go in, purge those files, update them, consolidate them where necessary, all of that takes time. It doesn't happen by itself, and we're physically starting to run out of space in this building for file storage. And honestly, the way they're organized now, the employees that are currently in those positions are finding it very difficult to do their jobs efficiently when the data is scattered all over the place. So I think that the 3 hours is a kind of a bare minimum scenario as far as being able to get some of the work done. Not to mention the ability to provide better support for the boards and commissions that they support and the community at large. Oops. Moving beyond the labor requests, the other impacts on the town office budget was mostly around our health and dental insurance. And again, where the overall increase in health insurance for the town is about 11%, and because we don't have employees that are eligible, the actual impact to the town office budget is only 7.3%. And the switch to Harvard Pilgrim from Tufts saved us roughly 5%. The increase would have been, overall for the town, would have been about 16.4% had we stayed with Tufts, and the switch to Harvard lowered that to only an 11% increase. And dental across the board went up about 4%. Oops.
Is that total combined employee and town?
That is town only.
Town.
Right, that is town only. And let me see. Apologize. Let's go back. So the other line items in the budget that have been impacted, and most of them relatively minor, with the exception of the information mailing at the bottom, which we increased. Computer support is down a bit. The town report, we found a new vendor that saved us some money So that's down $600 going into 2020 from 2,800 down to about 2,200. General supplies, the request is down 500. Electricity based on actual usage, I was able to trim about 1,200 out of the request. Office equipment, we went up about $300 on that based on the cost of the PCs that need to be replaced in the rotation this year. The cost of from our webpage hosting vendor is up $100 for the year, which is relatively modest. That's about a 5% increase. And the info mailing basically is up $1,950. We have the mailing going out for the police station project. That's going to be in people's mailboxes by next week. And the cost for that mailing alone is over $1,000. So, so the request raising it from $1,050 to $3,000 for a total net increase of $1,950 is in anticipation of other mailings along those lines. And that's all I have.
Nice
Any questions on that, on what I present?
Is that a McLaren?
That is not, that is a Dodge Fight.
Oh, I couldn't see that hood ornament.
Yeah.
It looks like Hot Wheels.
Yeah, you know that increase I was requesting?
Yeah.
So,
First of all, I think as far as employee compensation, anything that's gonna be discussed on that is gonna be a non-public based on the previous history here, that's a non-public. But one of the things I'd like to know is you're looking to increase the hours for the individuals that are here now. What's the thought on that as far as just bringing in an additional person?
so the problem with bringing in an additional person, let's say we take those 6 hours that I'm asking for and hire a person for 6 hours.
No,
a
I'm
week.
saying whether, my question is, your comment, if I understood you correctly, was you were saying that there was more work that needed to be done, but you chose the 6 hours to keep it below the full-time status.
Correct.
My question is, to get the work done,
Mhm.
would we not look at bringing in an additional person?
You could. I mean, that is an option, but for the number of hours that you would have somebody to do that, I'm not sure that it would gain us a lot. Not to mention that any new person would not have the institutional knowledge that the existing employees have. So that you would have to train them, not saying that it's an impossible task, but you would have to train them, get them up to speed. And depending on what their limited availability was and the way we broke out the responsibilities, they would be somewhat limited in their overall usefulness versus people that are already here and are here the 4 days a week that the town hall is open to the public. And adding another person to manage, adding another person to evaluate, I'm not sure that's necessary when we have people that are already employed by us, that just increasing their hours would allow us to get the same tasks done and not increase the headcount to do it.
But you said they were already working more than the 28 they're supposed to be, so there's
Well-
no net gain if you just made it efficient.
So, except that the only reason they were able to do that is that there was no town administrator full-time for a period of time, so that the budget was able to absorb those extra hours. Otherwise, if you budget them for 28 this year, then they're gonna have to be held to 28.
Right, but that was why they were working additional hours, was to help fill that void. So,
But
that's,
weren't they
and we keep hearing that if we get software or we do an upgrade, whatever, that we're gonna help with that, but yet it's not. So that's why when you would explain that there was more work yet to be done, but we're limiting them to keep them under that full-time status, my mind is saying, well, I'm hearing it from two different sides.
So I'm trying to balance the cost to the town with the work that needs to be done. And again, when you trigger benefits, the cost that it's gonna add per employee is probably somewhere between $8,500 and $10,000.
We're not looking at triggering benefits. You keep that off the table because you just, my only question is this, Scott. One side says that we have more work to get done
We do.
than what 6 hours will do. Should we be looking at another person? It's a yes or no, or you think that
So-
6 hours will get all the work done?
So, well, 6 hours will get more work done than we're doing today, for sure. The, how we prioritize that will determine, how many of these types of projects we can knock off. Could we use somebody with, and for another, 15, 20 hours a week? Possibly we could. But I'm not sure, going out and trying to find a person, especially in this environment, that's gonna be willing to accept the job that's, 16 or 20 hours a week. You might find somebody with a scenario where that works. But honestly, I don't understand why we wouldn't want to invest in the people we already have that already have the knowledge. For example, going through those files, somebody has to understand what they're looking at to decide, looking at a records retention list, what's valuable, what's not valuable to a property file, for example. And if you hire a new person that doesn't have that depth of knowledge, then they're somewhat useless for a period of time.
But it's, and I'm not saying that I think going off on a different venue to advocate. I'm trying to stay focused on what does the town need. Forget, looking at town records or whatever. If there's a job-specific task that has to be done, then someone in that role would handle it. Maybe a new person might be doing something different. That's all I'm trying to look at to say, should we be looking that we have more work, and I'd like to know what that would be, but we have more work than what the 6 hours are that you're advocating?
Well, I think the two best people to answer that question are here.
But you're proposing this increase, so that's why I'm looking at you and not them.
Right. Well, I'm proposing this increase based on a list of projects that, quite frankly, are things that slip through the cracks. And there are some things like just keeping the building permits, for example. They have expiration dates. There is, we're hoping that while we might be able to get some software that's gonna help us manage that, right now, there is no real way for somebody to effectively find out when they're gonna expire and send notification to the applicant to let them know that it's time to renew. Current use files, we don't have the ability to keep those, one, identify them correctly, keep them up to date, and we're essentially out of compliance with state law, because if somebody came in and did an audit, we would not be able to give them an accurate picture of the status of any piece of property that was or wasn't in current use. Those are the things that people that are knowledgeable about the law, about their position, have the ability to do. And without being able to do that, and understand what those files mean, be able to provide the right level of support to residents that come through the door and have the time to do it correctly, makes a third person, if you will, somewhat limited in what they can do. As far as the hours, the property files, like I mentioned, the current use information. There's information in the files that's missing. There's letters that need to be sent to the property owners requesting the information. We have exemption and credit files for people for their taxes that need to be updated. And again, letters sent to all the residents receiving any type of exemption to verify that they still qualify on an annual basis.
By law.
Yeah. Just general records management, which I think we all agree is an issue for every department here. Files physically need to be gone through and moved. From files up here need to be relocated to the basement just to make more room up here for ongoing business. And some of the files downstairs need to be purged. And again, somebody that understands what they're looking at needs to be able to make that decision. We do need to do some work on updating the road files, making sure the ones that we have are accurate as to what's public, private, what the main driveways are. When the road was accepted by the town, we get these calls all the time from banks. People are applying for a mortgage. They want to know if the road is a public way or not, or if it isn't, when it might be. There's keeping up with the E911 process to make sure that we're in compliance with their requests, so that the first responders are showing up to the right address. Let's see. I mean, there's opportunities to put more information from the various boards and committees that land use supports on the website, so that, once again, people that need information don't necessarily have to interrupt folks. They can get it right off the website. They don't have to call here. It'll just make productivity here a bit better as well. And those are kind of the highlights of things that we feel haven't been getting done and would need to be getting done. And an additional 6 hours a week is a start on that without triggering a massive expense of additional benefits.
Any questions?
No, I was just doing alternate math.
Okay.
I'm gonna say, looking at this thing overall, because Scott brought this to our attention, and then looking at the town budget in total, particularly what we pay our people, I did some research in a couple different directions, and we're underpaying our people in general for their positions by about 22% across the board, whether it be highway department, fire, police department, or the office staff here.
You have anything to share with us that you have for the documentation?
No, I didn't bring any documentation with it. Just to verify some of Scott's numbers, mine are actually slightly lower than his, but not by a measurable percentage. But he is correct. We are underpaying our people by a significant margin, but our budget overall is unsustainable in terms of we've been giving people 2-3% raises on a yearly basis, trying to stay at a zero-line basis, close to the default budget, and cutting out things like gasoline, cutting out supplies for highway department. And you can't keep doing that and still let the people give the people the proper tools to do their jobs. Overall, we're in business to provide services to the town. How we can do so economically is a question, but we can't afford to keep losing institutional knowledge because office people here can go to the next town over and get a $5 an hour raise. you know, it just doesn't make any sense to keep training and keep training and keep training. And we're looking at probable losses from the police department, possible losses from this, the town office. I have no idea why the folks down at the highway department haven't moved on. But we need to consider pretty much going across the board and saying what is on par with other towns.
One other anecdotal point is some employees with benefits, their increased medical premium is actually more than what they potentially get with a 3% raise. They'll be losing money.
I'm in charge of hiring right now for my group at work. I had to hire 6 new people, and the struggle we had to find people for what we wanted to pay was real. The top 5 candidates that we had, we lost to other companies that paid more. It's a tough hiring market out there, and wages are going up substantially. I realize that's anecdotal, and it doesn't really work with, in terms of what towns are gonna pay, because I'm in a different business, but I have had personal knowledge of this over the last 2 or 3 months, having worked that hiring process.
I spoke to Scott over the holidays, and my biggest fear on all this, and take it as it is we put this through. There's an increase, a substantial increase. People look at it and they vote down the budget. Once they vote down the budget, we can't give any raises at all. Because that was passed several years ago, that if it's not voted on, raises don't go through at all. So.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
So, the bottom line was it would increase the tax basis by 9 cents. So I think if people, I think this also for warrant articles, but if you're doing anything with money, I think you need to say, this would impact your taxes by 9 cents per thousand, or 0.02 cents, because that way, when people are seeing $2.5 million, they're thinking, oh my God, my taxes are gonna be $40. And because I don't think people understand how it's calculated. So in general, I feel like.
They voted down a police station for a 10-cent raise.
But they don't know that it was 10 cents.
It was.
The dollar amount, the tax,
No, that was put out there.
That was published.
That was published.
It was
on,
published, but
and-
it wasn't on the warrant article.
But the thing you have to understand is, it's and I haven't checked math, but presume it's a 9 cent. That's a 9 cent, the other one's a 15, this one's a
Right.
15, it's cumulative, so it's when
Right.
we get to that bottom line
Right,
that we've got to say, hey, we're probably not gonna get this passed.
right.
And that's why I'm always trying to look at what other options do we have.
and like I said, that's my fears. I mean, I just have to. I mean, that's my biggest thing. Is I'm not saying a 3% is woo great, but it's a matter if we put forth 3% or 4%, and it's not huge, it goes through. If we put through, what we're basically looking at is anything from a 19 to a 24% increase. That could cause an issue, and then it gets voted down, and then what do we do? And that's why I told Scott was my biggest fear, is if we put something through that's too much, and it's voted down, you've got nothing till the next year, and then we're in a worse position than we are trying to put forth a 3 or 4 or 5.
If you hire a third person for this, you're still having the same increase as giving us 6 hours. I mean, I'm just talking,
If people
That
think
our
that
position.
you're getting a bigger raise than they get, they won't vote for it. Period. That's
Right, and
but
period.
I can go to McDonald's.
I know.
and-
I
you're
understand
absolutely
that.
right. You're at, well,
you're absolutely
preaching
right.
to the choir.
I could make a phone call and go to Ringe tomorrow for $18 an hour for just doing planning board, not everything else that I do.
Yeah,
It's not, I mean, and I'm not saying it to say I would do this or whatever. I'm just trying to give you a perspective of, and like he just said too, the hiring market, I mean, it's basically employees,
John's concerns are legitimate.
and I get that.
And what I was talking about was the town as a whole, across the board.
And I agree with
And
that,
we
too.
would be looking at something in excess of $200,000 added to the town budget, the proposed budget, if we brought everybody up to par. And that would be voted down in a heartbeat.
But can you put what the tax, so our budget
And,
is
and we would be
$2.5
looking at
million.
almost a $1 increase on the taxes. And
But for the
I,
bottom line for the entire town budget, so whatever it is.
and
how
that's
much
just
is
based
that?
on salaries, not based on
No,
all
I'm
the other
talking the
things.
whole entire budget.
Yeah, but just, I don't know
From
what.
the default budget would be to what this budget
We,
would be.
we're already
And
talking,
normally, when we sit down at the deliberative sessions and all the hearings and all that, we give that information. We have it in a program. That's why Dave plugs all this stuff in.
Right.
And then he plugs in the recommended warrant articles, and it spits out a number that says this is what the proposed or the estimated tax rate will be.
Right.
And we spit that out. And we published when the police department went up. This is what it would be year 1 through year 10.
Right.
And it was decreasing. So we give that information.
But
Whether
the
people
50
listen, for
Well, that's the
when the
thing.
people look at it, you've got to remember, you've got a section of town, probably a good 25% of the voters, and we only get 30% that show up. 25% of those go down and mark no. They don't even read it. They just mark no. So then you've got to convince the other 75% of that 33% to vote yes.
So you need, instead of say, it's for the 50 people who show up at the deliberative session, because nobody goes to that.
Right.
You know what I mean? So when all this stuff is being talked about, the only thing they're gonna look at is when they go to the poll and they go to look at these warrant articles, so those other 75% of the 33% are gonna read the question and say, this will impact your taxes by this amount of money. And there's other towns that do it on every single fiduciary warrant article, and they get way more stuff passed, because you're not. No, okay, I'm done. Sorry.
it boils down to what can we sell versus what do you folks
Right,
deserve.
but people, I mean, we
And
provide a service for the town, and the town's people, we could have packed the room if we wanted to. You know what I mean? For all of us.
the town wants the world, but they don't wanna pay for it. And that is what
Right.
we're battling with here.
There are people that have never been in the town office in their
Oh,
life.
I know.
In their life.
I
As far as
know.
they're
And if I
concerned,
didn't work
you don't
there,
do
I wouldn't
anything for
either.
them.
Right,
You don't pick up their garbage. you know?
right. Oh, I know. We don't have water, we don't have sewer, we don't have trash.
Well,
But,
And that's how they think.
right, but but when they go to vote, they need to have something that they can relate to make an informed decision of, yes, oh, all right, it's only gonna affect my taxes by 9 cents, or you know what I mean? Like, because when you see these big numbers, it sounds like a lot of money.
It does, and
But when you
but
break down, like doing the GIS mapping, that it's like 20 cents per thousand over the course of 3 years. Cause it was $140,000 divided over 3 years.
The first thing they look at is how much more is it than last year? They don't care
Right.
why.
Right, and I agree with
Right
that.
out of the chute, this is $50,000 over last year's
Right,
town office budget,
right,
not counting anybody else.
right. But last year, over the year before, it was a lot more than the default budget.
A lot. No.
It was a couple $100,000 over the default, I
Yeah.
think.
Jim,
Yes.
all right,
So
Jim.
to,
Jim,
That was my budget.
Oh, Jim,
I just have a quick comment. And I came in here not knowing what was, I just wanted, they're gonna work on a budget, so I had a question on another part of the budget, but I came in here and I saw the presentation. Scott is spot on, okay? I work for another town. No matter what you say about how people vote in this town, you can't ignore the problem. You have to address the problem. Do not compare wages paid to people to the police station. They're two different subjects. People voted against the police station for a myriad of reasons, okay? Some of them have to do with building two, and it goes back a decade or two, okay? I think you need to address the problem, because you have a morale issue. The people here are significantly underpaid. I work for a very small town. People that do the comparable jobs there are paid well more than people here. The town I work for is all part-time too. I get compensated reasonably well, okay? And you gotta be competitive. At some point, it's gonna come back and haunt you. You have to at least try.
That's it.
You have
gotta
to
pass
try.
it. That's what you have to do. You have to get it passed.
Right, and like I said, that's my biggest fear is getting it passed. Because if
But
it doesn't,
you can't walk around afraid all day.
no. But I also have to look at the realistic part of it. If I put forth something that isn't passed, where does it put us for the next 365 days?
Or you could do something akin to what some towns did. I think the city of Portsmouth did it on veterans' tax credits when they went up. They voted, it was a city council, but they voted to do the whole thing. They phased it in over a couple of years, okay? There's ways of doing it, but I think you have to address the problem that's been brought to you. It's a real problem. You
And
can't
we
ignore it.
accept that. We're not.
Okay,
I don't think there's any of us that are sitting here thinking that.
but it's better to try and fail than to not try.
So if we, I would.
Here's, if I could,
That's all that's my only
if I could,
comment.
this is a real problem, and if it doesn't get addressed now, then that's up to you guys. But if something isn't addressed now, it's going to be down the road.
Mm-hmm.
There's going to come a tipping point where if it's not addressed now, it will need to be addressed. And it'll probably cost far more than what they're trying to do now. And I'm not saying I'm of two minds of this.
Right, and I completely understand what you're saying, but again, what I don't want to do is propose something that is, I mean, because again, you have to realize, and this is the bad part of it, they will judge the town budget based on the overall warrants put at the next town meeting, the next voting cycle, which will include the schools. Okay? So we can say all we want that we are going to raise it by 9 cents. But if something else raises it by more than that, they vote things down. So all I'm saying is I agree with Jim. A phased in piece could work. And we will discuss that obviously in non-public because again, we weren't presented phased in. We were presented, here's your number.
Quick question.
Mm-hmm.
How can you address that in a non-public session
thank you.
unless you're talking about
Specific people.
Johnny Jones and how he performs and whether or not he should get a raise? That's not a non-public session, I'll challenge you on that. If you're talking budgets, pay scales, and what positions are worth, that's public. That, just like today, you have to do that in a public session. If you're talking what a certain person should get, and what their, performance has been, then of course that's non-public.
The RSA, Jim, says for compensation. So if we're talking individual compensations to arrive at our budget, that would be a non-public. If we're talking the budget.
We're talking individual.
Well, that's how these budgets have arrived at. You take the individuals in the department, what the rates are, benefits if it's benefits in the department. All of that's itemized out to come up with your budget. Same thing that.
I don't know if
But you're
I
talking
quite
a
agree with
position,
your
you're not talking a
interpretation,
person.
but that's okay. I understand where you're coming from.
Okay.
So,
So
just-
what, okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so just in keeping with some of the data that I think all of us have seen and uncovered, clearly the town is you know, a little bit behind the curve. And again, you know, from my perspective, what I've requested, even with that request, we're gonna be at the lower end of a competitive scale. One of the things that, quite honestly, I fear, and is that during the course of the year, we have a good chance of losing, in my estimation, 2 to 4 people, and filling those slots is going to be challenging. And you know, I'll give you an example. My wife works in the town of Amherst. They had a planner 1 position in their community development department. They lost that person to another town. Couldn't get anybody to even apply for the job. Upgraded it to a planner 2 and increased the salary. And at this point, they have yet to see somebody who is even remotely qualified, and 6 months has gone by. And it's a tight labor market, and my fear, honestly, and I'm being kind of selfish here, is I don't want to end up needing to go out and recruit 2 to 4 positions to backfill and have it go on for months without anybody able to perform those duties. And one of the downsides of being a small town, in a lot of cases, it's not like you have a department with 3 people in it, and one of them leaves and the other 2 people can carry the load. We have situations where if one person leaves, there is nobody left to carry the load. And that's just the nature of the business that we're in. And I think there's you know, some pain associated with that whole process. And it's gonna impact the community at some level. And I think what Jeff was pointing out is correct. At some point, you can't keep having that scale keep shifting back from the market and hope that it's just gonna go away. You know, at some point, and that's why most towns, every 4 to 5 years, are doing salary studies. They're going out there. And I participate just in, you know, the local 12 or 15 towns. You know, we do, you know, annual spot surveys, you know, what's your COLA increase gonna be, you know, what kind of merits are you giving out, et cetera, because we're all polling each other all the time just to get a feel for where the market is. That's what we do, that's our job. And, you know, New Ipswich risks losing people and having a bit of a vacuum for a period of time and not being able to backfill. And will they eventually get through it? Sure. You know, everybody's replaceable, and sooner or later you might find the right candidate with the right skill set. But I guarantee you, you're gonna, and as I have found myself in other towns, is in order to attract people, you end up paying them typically, you know, $1, $2, $3 more than the person that left, because you have to poach them from another town. And that's the reality. I know the police chief has got the same concern, because he's talking to his peers and he's seeing it happening. And in his case, there are towns offering police officers $5,000 and $10,000 signing bonuses in addition to increasing, you know, their rate of pay by $2, $3, $4, $5 an hour. So that's the environment we're in right now.
Question is, John, and, you know, to legitimize your concern, how much do you feel we could increase the budget over the default budget? I mean, what do you feel the townspeople would accept?
I don't know, and that's the thing, Bert. I mean, sometimes it's ridiculous, you know, that they just get a bug and they're gonna vote no.
I think we
You know?
have to look at it analytically, is to say, this is where that position, that wage is gonna be. Do the math and see what it comes out to. And if we have to sell that, that's how we do it. But right now, I'm not at that point in time. I don't think we've looked at this analytically. You've given us information, there's nothing showing the calculations, and I think once we come to that, we can do the math.
Calculations based on what, David?
What an hourly rate is gonna be, what the hours were. This is how we've come up to the number. I see a total number, so.
So
So it's very simple. The hourly rates that I'm requesting for the accounting clerk
Mhm.
and the two land use people is $20 an hour based on 31 hours apiece and 40 for the accounting clerk. That's where those numbers come from. That's what I'm requesting for an hourly rate. And that puts them near the very bottom of the competitive range that's out there, that for those positions are ranging from about $18 to $23 an hour.
And what are they making right now?
So,
that,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah, we're not
Yeah.
discussing that.
never mind.
Let's,
So yeah,
lower-
so
lower
I
than that
I mean,
by
yeah, I mean,
6
I did the math and where, so I've sat here because I do mine on paper. So
We know.
you know, like you said, what he projected with the hours that they're currently, or what the projected hours, and it comes out to the 106,080. I've done some other stuff that when we're ready to talk about it, I have here, and we can talk about it. So I'm not writing it off. That's what, when I was listening to you,
Yeah.
I was doing
And that's
my
fine.
paper math.
And that's,
On the salary,
Yeah.
we get all the salaries from the DPW, we get all the salaries from the police department, we should have all the salaries from the town office as well. On paper, not for discussion in an open meeting per se on individuals. I think that's what you were just asking for, was.
I'm just saying, I see Scott's number here as a
Yes.
total.
Right,
And I
Scott's is.
don't know how it came through.
Yeah.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
fair enough, I think, to ask.
I understood.
And then ultimately, it comes down to the individuals. It shouldn't be a blanket, everybody's gonna get this.
Right.
It should be.
Well, I understand what, but no, I understand what he's saying is that, you know, and I guess that's my fear, is that we go, okay, a position is worth this dollar amount, but you're not gonna get that. So, so I think that's the other piece, is like, we say the position of, ABC filer is a $20 position, but we're only gonna pay you $18.40. That's kind of I
You
mean,
can't do that.
why not?
If you're setting the range, then the starting.
But
would
what
be the
if
bottom of the
yeah?
range, and
But what if we're
everything-
hiring you as an unskilled person that we're going to train as an ABC filer?
Then you start me at the bottom of the range.
so this is, in my mind, what we're missing.
Mm-hmm.
Now, these are the ranges for Wilton from 2015 when we did a wage study, and they haven't changed. They're still using this 4 or 5-year-old data, but they established a range, a minimum and a maximum for a job category or a specific position.
All right, I'm gonna go right on the public record right now, Scott. We have looked at that in the past. I, for one, am against something like that. And that is why I think previously this board had gone with the merit, because a merit is based on the actual person's performance, not you are automatically gonna get to this point. So that's, I'm not looking for you to defend it, I just wanna be on the record with my feeling
Okay,
on that
so-
range.
So let me explain it then. I don't know how, this happens to be Jaffrey. I don't know for sure how they do theirs, but I do know this one. And what this establishes is a minimum for the job, a maximum for the job, and a midpoint. And the way we did it in Wilton is based on somebody's performance evaluation and whether they were at the low end, midpoint, or high end would determine the percentage of the merit increase that they would get. And as you went up, your merit increase, though your performance might be the same, your merit increase would actually decrease because you're starting to approach the maximum of the job. When you hit the maximum of the job, you're at the maximum. No COLA, no merit, no anything. Because you've been there 20 years.
Unless the ranges change.
Unless the ranges change, or you get promoted and you're now at a different step and grade. That's how
Company in America.
that's how I've done it in the private sector. And honestly, Wilton's is the simplest one of any of them that I've seen. Some of them are more complex, but it's not a guarantee that anybody's gonna get anything. If their performance is such, they might not get an increase, depending on where they are. Nothing is automatic. It's how you set your policy. But what you have to start with is a framework. This is the framework. New Ipswich does not have a framework. So therefore, you can have a job description, and depending on whatever, all of a sudden, we're gonna hire, a DPW worker, and let's see, the guys that are in there now are at this level, but this one, we're gonna knock them down a level and start them at a lower rate. That's fine, but understand that when you start falling outside of what the market is doing, is your ability to attract and retain people is greatly diminished. And that is why, my recommendation is if you want to be a professional, solid community, is you have to have structure. And my observation in the 90 days here is this town is missing a lot of structure on a lot of things. And I think that you hired me to help fix some of those things. I give advice, you don't have to take it. But I'm here to instill best practices that other communities are using. You can choose to adopt them or not adopt them. And that's the only point that I'm trying to make.
Fair enough. Thank you. Debbie?
Hey, how are you? So, the merit increase, so 2.5% of 15 or so dollars is like 19 cents an hour. And if you're doing a really good job, and your review is really good, and then you say, oh, here's your 19 cents. Thanks. I'm sorry. I mean, do you get a 2.5% raise when you think you're doing a really good job and the people who are reviewing you give you a really good review? Is it 2.5%? You know what I'm saying?
Are you asking me personally, or what are you?
No, I'm just trying to relate it to you. So when you get a really good review, and you're only making $15 an hour, and your raise is 19 cents.
Debbie, if
It's
you look at it in that
2.5%.
view, I look at it in this view, okay?
Mm-hmm.
If you work someplace for 5 years and we've allocated a 3% merit raise, that's a 15% increase over 5 years. I think that's very good.
Okay.
$1.25.
You may look at it that 15% over 5 years is a,
Dave,
But
this
it
town
doesn't,
has
but it
been
doesn't
run.
keep up, it doesn't keep up
This is
with
what I'm saying.
inflation.
But
It doesn't keep up.
wait a minute though,
Hold
that's,
on, let me finish.
you're looking at it
No,
from
I'm not.
a merit increase.
Well, that's
We
what you
are-
just said.
Wait a minute,
That's
Debbie.
why I said that.
You asked on the percentage for the merit increase. This board has made adjustments to hourly rates. We have made adjustments to hourly rates.
When? Recently?
Yes.
Within the last
Yeah.
two maybe 3 years, we
Oh,
did,
no, 18 cents.
we did a COLA increase,
But
and then we
we've
did.
done
So do
for
we-
different,
We don't qualify for that, or, I'm just asking the question, I'm not trying to be sarcastic. So we got 2.5 last year, and this past review this year, we got 3%.
Okay. What did that position, look at it from 5-year period, were there hourly rate adjustments?
Probably. I mean, if you get your merit.
Not the
your
merit, just an hourly
Oh,
rate
hourly rate?
adjustment.
No. No.
I
Merit
I
on-
would have to go back and look at my notes, but I
Okay.
can assure you there were.
I would like to see that, I would appreciate it, because I have not, I've been here 3 years, and I have not seen anything other than a merit increase.
Okay, for 3 years.
Correct.
It might have
Okay.
been prior to
Yeah.
that, but yes, we did do COLA increases when I was either on the budget committee or the finance
I
advisory.
wouldn't even call it a COLA. It was that, hey,
Yeah, Laura's
this
been
one
here
is,
almost 5, she hasn't seen it either.
all right.
Anyway. that's
Moving
beside
along,
the
with
point.
this budget here, I would, the only question I have, Scott, is on, what were the increase for the, the notices? I know you had mentioned the mailing,
Correct.
but I didn't pick up on the BOS notices.
Info mailing 1950.
Yeah, I think notice and
Right about the middle of the page.
honestly, 3 weeks ago, I probably could have answered that question for you when it was fresh in my
Okay.
mind. I don't have it right now.
Okay. Other than that and the salaries, I say we go with that
Yeah.
budget.
Yeah.
But the salaries have to.
No, the notices, that's when we have to put stuff in the newspaper and things like that, correct?
Correct, so when I,
So, yeah.
That's
my-
why I was just
Yeah.
looking
So
here.
those-
It was,
so those 4
1600.
positions,
50, then it went to 16, and now we're at 19,
Well, this is what we're actually spending, was 1650.
right? But
Yeah.
I don't know what the notices were that we,
well, that would be, so the 4 positions that open up that I have to recruit for, that would come out of that budget.
That's for, I mean, we're gonna have the additional budget hearing notices. Well, not budget hearing, but, you know, we have the budget hearing, the bond hearing,
those are, yeah, we do that.
If you want.
Other than,
the bond, right?
Yeah.
So it may have
Well,
been.
again,
Okay.
this is
Yeah.
very different. You were actually responsible.
you guys and I said my piece.
No, I'm fine, yeah, except for those 2 lines that I'd like to discuss more. I'm good with the budget as presented.
No, not.
Yeah, same here.
Yes, we have to vote on
So what does that mean?
Means that the board will look at,
Those top 2 line items separately.
Oh, okay. Other than that, you're good with the budget as presented?
Yes.
Okay. So when you have this non-public and you're not talking about specific people, but you are talking about our jobs, may we attend that non-public?
I've just seen a lot of these, they'll never
Because it
take
does
mine, so.
directly impact.
the non-public is to do hourly rates by position. When that number is get plugged into a budget,
Mhm.
by all means, you know, it'll be at the public hearing. Before that, you can ask for it, you can see what it is. No
But
problem.
we cannot attend the non-public even though it affects our jobs, our position.
Mm. Why? We're talking about what we're looking at for
But that's
employee
public
compensation. What is?
The wages are public.
And there will be, that's not what we're saying.
when you
When we do the
discuss the
calculation to
wages.
get to the total, then we'll,
Right, but when you're discussing what you're going to pay each position, that's public.
Position
Debbie,
or-
let's just
position or
read the
person?
RSA.
Okay. I like that.
The dismissal, promotional, or compensation of any public employee or disciplining of such employee or investigation of any charges, blah, 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 blah.
Specific employee. That's not-
Compensation of any public employee.
Right,
Correct.
But
We go
if
into
it's-
non-public.
but if it's,
It's not, if you were being if an
it was
employee were
me.
being disciplined,
Right,
or
that's.
we were
that's
negotiating a contract with somebody,
non-public.
or,
Right,
then that
That's
would be
non-public.
non-public with that
right,
person.
but you're taking that out of context, compensation. If you're just talking general compensation for a general position, that's not non-public.
And that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the positions here that the town has to fund.
Correct,
Correct.
that's not non-public.
I disagree with you.
Okay,
Okay,
I'll check with the
Okay.
NHMA tomorrow.
very good.
Yeah.
Jim?
A quick comment.
Yeah.
I understand where you're coming from in the reading of that, but if you accept your interpretation, then that employee would have the right to be there,
Right,
number one, and that employee would have the right to make it public if they wanted to.
It doesn't, I don't read that in there. Nowhere in there does it mention about the employee being there. I know when you're doing a
Review.
review or a discipline or whatever, that person has the,
right,
Your
'cause that's
read
a
of that
specific
is
person.
that it's non-public because it deals with a specific person, not 10 people with the same wage scale, okay?
But we haven't said they're gonna have the same wage scale.
What?
Or whatever.
No, but we're not talking about a wage scale, we're talking about what Johnny Jones is gonna get paid this year in the budget, okay? But then that person should have a right to be there and should be able to say they wanna make it public. I'm not saying they should do that, okay? But I think they do, because you're under an umbrella of compensation, discipline, and a bunch of things.
Right, so, and this kind of gets back to my earlier point, that it's one thing if you want to talk about the employee
Right,
versus the position. And that's why I say you gotta keep separating the individual employee versus the position. If we're talking about the position and the salary, wage rate for the position, then I agree with Jim that that would be,
So if we just stated, so if I stated right now that all positions within the town office are paid somewhere between .01 and 100,000.
You would go line item by
You can do that publicly.
Yeah, yeah, I can do that publicly, and then we can talk about each employee individually.
What you're
right,
talking-
but I guess,
but you're not basing the salary on the employee, you're basing it on the position,
This is all
on the
been addressed
detail
before
of what
somewhere
they
else.
have to
Yeah.
do.
Okay, you're
You're assuming that's what we're gonna do.
Well, that's what
You're
you should be
the-
doing, that's
no,
what you're saying
no.
you're gonna do.
No, we did not say that. That's what Scott said we were gonna do.
Oh, so you're gonna talk about the people who are in the positions? Then
I'm looking-
we should be there
I'm
to
looking
hear.
to hire a town.
but he doesn't
administrator.
say that, Debbie.
Right,
That's
right,
your
right.
interpretation. You can check with whomever you like, but that's
Okay.
not what the RSA says.
Okay. But, so are you talking about positions and the salaries for the position? Or are you talking about, hey, do you think Debbie should get less money and Laurie should get more money and, are you putting people in it? I guess is what I'm asking.
We're saying that the employee in this position should be at X. We're not saying, well, we're gonna develop a range
Well,
of,
I
What
don't
about
care
the
about the
hours,
Right.
range. So you're talking about specific employees, not
Correct.
the position itself?
correct. Correct.
Okay, so,
Well, the employee has a position.
right, but you're not basing the salary on the person. You're basing it on the position, no matter who is in that job.
Wait a minute. That's what Scott is suggesting, okay?
Okay.
As John described earlier, and I have always looked at it that way, is if I'm gonna hire somebody for, and I'll use land use,
Okay,
okay? And they've got 10 years of experience versus somebody that doesn't, I'm gonna look at it and say,
Okay.
well, this is what we've been paying, this person had X amount of experience, this is where it should be at.
right.
But to Scott's comment, there should be a range already established. To
That's,
set
But I'll be honest, that's not something we're going to fix
I understand.
Oh, no, that's.
in the next
Exactly.
2 weeks,
The next
which is
one?
when we have to have this all, closed up. So what we're talking about is we're going to sit as a board and discuss how we're going to set the budget and the rates that are going to be put on each individual in the positions that they're currently sitting in.
So, in order not to tie Ron up, say we should go through the next budget that was on there.
It's the GGB.
General government buildings.
Can I ask you a generic budget question? I came in to ask.
Sure.
I just wanna-
You know the answer, why are you gonna ask the
Well,
question?
the answer I know is no, but if it's no, then I may join a group of people to force the
$2
issue.
million.
You are the proud owner of an attractive nuisance and health hazard on Greenville Road, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any plans to do something with this?
That was discussed, I believe, in public session just a few
2
weeks ago.
3 weeks ago.
Yeah,
We
it's in the budget.
budgeted to,
It's in the budget?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
well, just limited measures.
yeah, there's a couple different measures that are in the budget that we have earmarked funds for.
It's a rat hole.
It's a rat hole that's not,
Fences don't work.
What doesn't work?
Fences don't keep the rats in or out. Not to mention raccoons and other assorted creatures.
Yeah,
they can find something to eat in there, knock themselves out.
yeah.
We encourage wildlife.
So what's
Good,
the
when
next-
they eat them all, it'll be easy to take care
We're moving on,
of.
please.
What's
Yeah.
your next budget, so I,
General government buildings,
Yes,
oh,
you have PowerPoint?
I do not have a PowerPoint.
Darn.
what?
That's pretty simple, I hope.
Anyway, it's good to have you here. Thank you.
That's the.
You got some places to go? Oh, you could get a new carpet out of it.
It's an Excel spreadsheet. Many pages, many
Good
links.
evening, sir.
Good evening, thanks for coming.
All right, well, hopefully we'll see you tomorrow.
Thanks for dropping by. Not on the clock, right? That's what Dave's been working on, that spreadsheet, a new column, 2020.
Flipping rocks. Great question, why? John working off that on his paper. That's the question.
What's that?
It's the check, you know,
Yeah, the check and
checks and
balance.
balances, that's right.
When you're on your computer, he has his paper.
Mhm.
Two bombs off.
It worked,
It
doesn't
works.
I wasn't, it actually wasn't a sarcastic comment.
I brought up.
We
I know
didn't
it's
take it
rare.
that way.
I know it's rare, but sometimes I actually speak just normal.
So that scanning of documents in the town office, that was a grant some number of years ago to scan important documents. And Ed Rogers was the one that was going down in the basement and scanning documents. I have no idea where they went or how far it went, but there was a grant and the money was used to scan documents and Ed Rogers volunteered.
What year was that?
5, 6, 7.
Did you do this budget?
Ed Rogers did not.
We did. We're revisiting this from 3 weeks ago as well.
Yeah.
Oh, is this because of the land? I can't remember why. Whatever.
The high points, Scott, on this?
So we went through all this in the back.
It was, I think I had all of these numbers plugged in, the ones that we had, was going back to the hourly rate.
Yeah.
And didn't we add $4,000 for the security fence?
We
Let's
did.
see.
Oh, actually, I forgot
Yes.
to add that. Yes,
Yep.
we did. Separate line item.
Wow, good thing you keep me around.
I'm glad you showed up.
Thanks. So I'll ask the question, why are we revisiting?
Custodian.
Did we need
Yeah.
more information about the?
No, the only thing I have down on here, it's, as blanks, was, the,
tower
he increased
pad?
the rate or hours or something.
So I didn't change the hours, what I did was I increased the rate of
Yeah.
our facilities person,
Mm-hmm.
from $15.15 an hour to a flat 17.
Yeah,
And I increased the person who does our custodial services in this building from $12.50 an hour to 14.
14, yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was,
That's fine.
Yep.
Okay. It's good.
I have a note about safety fencing and disposal for that property. That was the 4,000?
Yep.
Three.
yeah, I drive by it every day, I never looked at it, what a mess it was, after that meeting, I went and looked at it, whoa, that is a mess.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody should just light a match.
They did.
They
They
did,
did.
that's the problem.
Yeah, well, they should do it again and do a better job.
That's what our fire department does. Yes, if they burned it to the ground flat, it would be no problem.
Exactly.
Yeah,
But our efficient fire department caught it halfway.
yeah, we also increased groundskeeping to 2,000, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So what's the bottom line?
Without the, top three items, 74,405.
And the question is whether to agree to bump the custodian up to 14, is that the question?
Bumping up to 17.
Yeah, the facilities, facilities to
Oh, right,
17
yeah,
and
right.
custodian to 14.
That's what that was based on.
How many hours a week does the custodian work?
4 to 4.5.
Yeah, we have her. Yeah, last year she was budgeted 156 hours total. And
Less than 4.
That's about 3 actually.
yep, and Mark was budgeted 832 hours.
That's based on 16 a week.
We're all set with that, and
That's good.
say we should go into non-public.
Okay.
How come tomorrow's meeting with the state is non-public?
Because we have counsel.
Yeah,
There's some legal issues.
yeah,
So that's considered pending litigation.
okay.
Potentially.
Need a motion?
Which one?
The right one.
No? Is that the one we're going in? Or-
Yeah.
Okay.
Which one were you thinking?
I had no idea which one. You told me we'd just bring this with me. I didn't know which one. I didn't know which one we were going in right away. It just says other business. Motion under RSA 91A3 2A, dismissal, promotion, or compensation of any public employee, or just put in such employees.
Second.